First of all, welcome everyone and thank you all for joining today's webinar on how Accolade uses messaging to deliver a better healthcare experience. We're so excited to be hosting this with our customer Accolade and that Hiren and Christine could be able to join us. So today's webinar will start with a quick introduction of both Sunbird and Accolade, and then we'll jump right into the meat of today's topic. Discussion with Hiren and Christine. As time allows, we'll have a quick Q&A with the audience at the end. We do have a lot of great content, so it might run a little bit over. The ending will be reserved for the Q&A though. And also just a quick reminder, we will be recording this webinar and we'll be sending a copy of this to everyone who registered. So we've got a great group hosting this webinar today from both Accolade and Sunbird. We've got Hiren and Christine from Accolade and Sarang and myself from Sunbird. So let's go quickly around the table and do a quick round of introductions. So I'm Grace, I'm the Customer Marketing Manager at Sunbird. I run the field and customer marketing efforts at Sunbird.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarang Paranhans. I'm a Product Marketing Manager at Sunbird and I run all our product marketing and GP initiatives at Sunbird.
Hi, I'm Christine Ng from Accolade. I am the Director of User Experience, and my main focus is on our member experience.
Hi, I'm Hiren Bhavsar. I'm a Director of Product Management for Machine Learning, Communications, and our Workforce Management.
Awesome. Thank you for the quick introductions, team. Now let's get started. So Sunbird is a fully managed chat and messaging infrastructure as a service that can be used by businesses to build chat and messaging easily into applications through its chat API and SDKs. Sunbird works with a host of companies in healthcare across health and benefits providers such as Accolade, Grand Rounds, Rally, and modern chronic condition management companies like Livongo to provide personalized care and improve patient engagement in their web and mobile applications. We also work with emerging healthcare communities and telemedicine companies such as Healthline, Carrot, PlushCare to facilitate group conversations and interactions between doctors and patients as well. Every month across our platform, we power messaging for 93 million users, sending more than 1 billion messages across 15,000 applications globally. We're also backed by some of the leading investors, including Iconic Capital, Tiger Global, Shasta, August Capital, and Y Combinator. So let's learn a little bit more about Accolade now. Christine, Hiren, can you tell us a little bit more about what Accolade does?
Great. Yeah, so Accolade, I explain it to people as we're kind of like a concierge for healthcare. So we really focus on bridging the gaps that people have, understanding what benefits the employer has offered, how to better utilize those benefits, just how to be a healthier person and a better spender in the healthcare market. Then if you go to the next slide, I'll let Hiren talk about this one.
Sure. So what we do is we primarily are supporting large employers and mid-sized employers, and we're getting into the small marketplace as well. And we offer 3 offerings. The first one is focused on what we call total benefits. It's focused on helping employees understand their benefits, their health and care benefits, as well as other type of benefits, and drive utilization so that employees understand the wealth of supporting services that they could have from their employer. The next tier for us is total care. What we do is we add on a couple of services in addition to the total benefits. We also provide provider search and we do price transparency. So we help people understand, like if you're looking for a doctor in your network and you don't really know and you haven't visited a certain type of specialist or those type of things, we'll help you try to find one that's tailored to your needs, that can be there when you're needing an appointment, as well as looking at their quality scores and estimating their services. So our specialists and our nurses can help you guide the care that comes along with that. And our top tier is what we call total health and benefits. And that's where we have, in addition to the total benefits and care, we also offer case management and disease management services. So for the chronic condition folks, we also assign nurses to them and help them through their care journey.
Wow. Thanks for that lovely introduction about Accolade, Christine and Hiren. Let's jump into a little bit of in-app messaging use cases out here. So you're using in-app messaging to connect your health assistants with employees to help them navigate the employer benefits in the broader healthcare system. Why is messaging such an important piece in delivering a better healthcare experience?
I think messaging is important just to help meet our members where they're at. Not everybody wants to talk on the phone, especially if you are in an open office. You might not want to talk about private healthcare information on the phone. So offering another channel that lets people communicate with us just increases opportunity for them to communicate with us in their own time, in their own method, and which increases engagement overall for Accolade. So Accolade, we started in 2009, and we were strictly a phone-based service. Even with just phone, we had a lot of wins. We had really high engagement with our health assistants. Member satisfaction was through the roof. And we saw a 3-to-1 ROI in 3 years. But even with like all of those wins, we still had challenges. One of our biggest challenges was having this one-to-one phone-based model was really difficult to scale. And also, like I mentioned earlier, not every member wants to use the phone to communicate. So going on to the next slide. So in 2017, we introduced messaging. Messaging was a huge win for us. We're currently serving about 1.5 million members. And right now, 42% of our engagements occur over messaging. With this, health assistants are able to support a lot more members via messaging. Some of that is just, while you're waiting for someone to answer a message, you can help someone else instead of a phone and you're just waiting and there's dead space. So we found that health assistants that are supporting members via messaging can handle twice as many members per hour. And then we also have certain health assistant teams that are digital only, so they only do messaging and not take phone calls. And we found that they're able to support up to 4 to 5 members at a time. Because like I said, there's that wait time where you're waiting for a response and that you could be helping someone else. We've also seen through our app, so when we first introduced our app, it was really focused on just messaging. And since then, we've added more self-serve features. But even now, our App Store rating, I think I checked yesterday, it was 4.9 App Store rating and 4.3 on Google Play. A lot of that, I think, is still due to that relationship with the health assistant, but the app does a really good job through messaging of allowing people to connect with another channel to that health assistant. So I think, part of that satisfaction is just that ease of connection for them.
And I would add that, one of the key things that's very important in healthcare is that engagement and the ability to help people understand what their options are, what their risks are, and give them guidance along the way. And it's super confusing to go through benefits and care. So what we found messaging did was it actually helped us drive even more engagement. One of the hypotheses we had going in was that we thought maybe people would stop using phone and actually shift to messaging. What we're finding is actually a different behavior. We're seeing that they're using it in addition to the phone channel. So let's say that you have something, you're at the doctor's office and you need something quick. You might message and say, hey, I need my ID card, or I want to check to see if I can reschedule this appointment. That allows you a very fast kind of transaction, but you can quickly also call back after the doctor's appointment and have a much richer engagement. So we're finding that engagement with our health assistants and with our nurses is actually deepening and enriching, and having 2 channels of support has been a huge help for both our members as well as our nurses and health assistants get that engagement that they're looking for.
Right.
We've actually seen our Net Promoter Score be the highest with those people who are using multi-channel.
Wow.
Right. Now that's amazing. That's great to hear. And how has, since you have added messaging to the application, how has that impacted internal product thinking or internal operations, internal business operations?
Yes, I mean, I can speak to the user experience of, We realize at Accolade that our health assistants are our secret sauce, that the relationships that they build with the members and the influence they're able to have with the members makes a huge difference. So we really look at messaging as just another way for them to do it. And we found that messaging actually makes some of those interactions even more seamless. So if you go to the next slide, I can show some examples. So for example, you might be talking to the health assistant about a claim, and there's a lot of wasted time where you're trying to describe what claim you're looking at. The health assistant has to look it up on their end. So in the app, we introduced a feature where the member is able to view all of their claims, and then we give them a button where they can easily insert the message or insert the claim into a message, send it to the health assistant and ask their question. So now the health assistant and the member are looking at the same claim right away. Another great example is with the benefits. When a health assistant recommends a benefit to a member, on the phone or previously with messaging, there was a lot of explanation of like, here's all the details about the benefit, here's how you get started. And then, sometimes the member would just forget all of that information. So now we've given the health assistants a really easy way to recommend a benefit to a member and insert it into a message. And if the member clicks on that tile in the message, they're able to open up on their end a page with all the details about that benefit and how to get enrolled, who's eligible, what's the cost. So it just makes that interaction between parties a lot more seamless because they can share things and look at the same thing in real time.
And that has a pretty big impact on operations as well. So shifting from that phone model, like Christine was saying, from an operations perspective, our health assistants or our clinicians had a lot of back and forth. And a lot of back and forth on the phone is tedious. You're playing that chase game of saying, oh, I left you a voicemail, and then you're it, and you've been tagged with a voicemail. This interaction where I can quickly follow up or park a message, and the member may not be around instantly, but I don't have to wait for that voicemail, or I don't have to wait for a response. I'm kind of done with that, and I can move on to the next thing. And as soon as the member logs back in and sends a message, they can then respond, and vice versa. If the member is on the weekend and they need something, but they can wait till Monday, they can message us. And then on Monday morning, when the health assistants come back online, they can quickly respond. So we're starting to see a different type of help pattern where in the asynchronous world, you can have that lag and it still helps you get the issues resolved or get that the discussions going. Versus on the phone, it is real time. So it needs to be there in person. So from operations, we've kind of learned and shifted to say, well, how do we use this as an essential channel? And especially on the follow-up side, it's really helped us figure out a better way to do the follow-ups versus that typical model where you pick up the phone and leave a voicemail. So I think that's helped. And then of course the concurrency, where you can do things more at once. That's really worked out very well for us, where we can try to say, well, okay, we know that there could be some idle time between when a member and the health assistants are chatting. And so I can go ahead and decide to help 4 to 5 people. So that's been a tremendous help for us to scale, as well as you still give that rich experience to the member, because we're never going to say you can't contact us. We're still able to reach the contact rates that we're looking for.
Right, so essentially you're improving patient experience, as well as you touched on the concurrency bit where you're allowing agents to interact with multiple patients at the same time. Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get a little bit under the hood and in towards the genesis of messaging. What was the process behind creating the messaging experience for your members initially, or as you go about like adding new functionality to Accolade, what's the process behind that?
Yeah. So again, I'll speak to the user experience and I'll let Hiren take the technical and operational pieces. So for user experience, we did a lot of upfront research to just look at other companies that were using messaging and look for best practices, look for things that we wanted to adopt, things that we wanted to avoid. Once we kind of had an idea of our direction, we had some concepts, we did a lot of validation, user testing, I think also part of that too, some of the research was just understanding how should the health assistants help people via messaging and what were best practices when interacting over messaging, because it is different than the phone. So, just sitting with some of those pilot groups of health assistants and looking at how they were interacting, and then trying to come up with some ideas to help them with, being trained to work on messaging to be able to respond people on that new channel.
And then on somehow how we integrated messaging into both our processes and then our data as well. One of the things that's powerful with Sendbird is that there is a lot of data that starts to stream to us in the event stream. And so we started literally looking at it and saying, how do we measure our engagement? How do we measure how many messages are going back and forth between our members and our staff? And how long is that taking? So we spent a lot of time also creating a data model that says, how do we move away from just a phone-based data model to a communications-based data model? So we kind of looked at how is phone and messaging similar and how are they also different? And we created a completely different communication model. And we follow the FHIR-based model here. So we were able to sit down and say, from an efficiency point of view, as well as engagement point of view, create KPIs to say, this is how many engagements we have in a given day. This is how many concurrency events we have in a given day. And then this is the type of engagement that drives. And so we were able to build a lot of rich cross-channel reporting off of this, and then help the health assistants as well see what kind of engagements they're having with their members. The other thing we did too was we changed our processes. I think Christine alluded to this a little bit, but we realized that people don't always want a fast response, or they may want, they don't need a specialist, they just need someone to respond quickly. For example, I just need my network card. So we also introduced something called the healthcare support channel. And that's where we were able to put a queue together and say, here's a queue of people, just submit your request into a queue. And the first person that's available will quickly be able to help you and get you what you need. And then if you need a specialist, we can always engage a specialist. But I think that having that multiple modes where you can directly reach out to one person versus reach out to a group of folks has helped us as well. And I think it's improved the member experience as well.
Right. That's amazing. That's amazing. Are there any other avenues that you're thinking about, like adding messaging to within the application?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that, again, the health assistant and like that real person is still our secret sauce. But whenever I think about the digital tools, I'm thinking about like, how do I help the member or empower the member really to help themselves with some of the self-serve tools. But then when they get stuck, how can they easily share where they left off with the health assistant? So when we look at things like provider search, if I'm looking for a provider and I find one that I think I like, but I have questions about them, being able to share that provider via message. So the health assistant can then look at the provider I'm talking about and help answer questions of whether they're in or out of network, or how much something might cost, or what the quality rating is. So, I mean, that's just an example, but those are always things I think about. It's like always bringing it back to a message and then giving both the member and the health assistant a way to make that interaction very seamless by, again, like sharing, this is as far as I got, here you go, let's look at it together and see if we can figure out a solution.
Right. Thanks for sharing that, Christine. There are plenty of audience members out here who are thinking about adding chat or messaging to their applications. You've done that successfully. What advice would you give to the audience as they plan their in-app messaging strategy right now?
I think, again, just thinking about like, how are people going to be using messaging, and then how are people internally going to be responding to those people. One assumption that I think we had going into this is that our members would be using messaging for very transactional things, and then they would call when they had a bigger issue. But through some of the usability studies that we did, we found that wasn't necessarily the case. That, as Hiren had said, a lot of people just wanted whatever channel was going to get back to them the fastest. So whether it was a dedicated health assistant or someone from the healthcare support queue or a phone call, we also found that because of that assumption, some of our health assistants were treating messaging in a very transactional way. So it was really looking at how do we mimic some of those things that we have on the phone as far as relationship building and do them via messaging. So one of the things we found was that health assistants were building a lot of rapport during that lag time when they were looking up things, and that wasn't necessarily happening via messaging. So just like, we had to do some thinking about like, how do we mimic some of that like quick back and forth on the phone via messaging? I think it's an easy thing to do, but it just takes some thought of like, oh, okay, this is a different channel, but we can still have a conversation in a similar way on it.
And I think that you have to think about the change management impact for your health, the people doing and receiving the messaging as well. And I think the other thing just to go in is look at your processes and see what key metrics you're looking for. So the change management element, what Christine was talking about is they have some assumptions of how their members are going to use it. And each member is slightly different. So the members are also going to react to them in a different way. And what we found out is we had to put some policies in place to say, make sure you do these type of things. Like, for example, how long do you keep a session open? Before you can decide that you're going to go ahead and get out of the session. So we had to learn and say, typically, on average, let's say 30 minutes is how long you stay in before you say, okay, I'm going to jet out of here. And if you need me, you can contact me at any time. So learning those kind of behaviors, both from the member side, what they're looking for, as well as what the person who is going to manage these messages. The other thing we learned is you have to have not only measures and KPIs for the business, so learning, okay, this is what how long a typical messaging session lasts, or how many we get in a given day, how many can be handled by a specific health assistant. You also need to give them the tools to manage their queue. So doing something that says, here's my queue management system. When I have 4 to 5 messages backing up, we've created with Christine's team some really good UI that helps them see what is my backlog or who's needing me right now versus who's idle. So thinking through not only just the member experience, but the management side, how do you make it easy to manage these multiple transactions that are going once? And then integrating to the CRM system. I think the SDK from Senberg makes it easier to build into your CRM. So we've done some really tight coupling and integration with the CRM. That means when you pop in, your screen also is reflecting your member information. And you're able to pull the right information transactionally and do things like quickly share information or share content. Look at their claims information right there. So you're not wasting time by swapping between applications or trying to pull up someone's record or information, which takes time. And it's also frustrating on the member side. So making sure you think of the holistic journey and then thinking about that experience from how do I make sure that I make it easier for both sides to have that engagement.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks for helping our audience learn so much about the different aspects of messaging and backend integrations. One final question. We're kind of nearing the end of our webinar, and we open up to Q&A. Before we get into that, what are some key trends in communication in the healthcare space that you'd like the audience to walk away with, that you're kind of thinking about and observing as you interact with patients?
Yes, I think one of the things that I've seen is we're getting away from the health insurance companies kind of owning the whole package. Companies are starting to do more cherry picking, kind of do like an a la carte menu of benefits, which I think is great. And it allows companies to really offer some really specific things to their group of employees. But I think it causes some confusion with the employees because now things are a little more splintered. There's a lot of places to go. They're kind of paralyzed by decisions. I think that Accolade does a really good job of just helping them see like what's right for them depending on their situation. but I think that, technology can help with that a lot more of just like recommending things to them in real time. I also see that because of this confusion, like members just really want someone to talk to advocate for them and answer their questions. I think messaging is allowing us to do that at a better scale. The average person, when you go to a doctor, it's like maybe 8 minutes that you see with the doctor. So there's still a lot of questions that people have. So the easier that like we can help people get those questions answered, I think the better.
I'd say on the technology aspect too, there's two trends that are pretty interesting with messaging. The traditional outbound email campaigns and is shifting to say, how do we drive better engagement, better reach, as well as better conversion of those marketing campaigns. So I'm seeing a lot more trend with SMS and with messaging as a campaign channel. And we're also doing things like that. So we might proactively outreach if we see some opportunities to engage. You have to be careful that you don't, feel too spammy about it. But when you start to build up that rich engagement with your member base, you can outreach to them. Let's say that you have a diabetic condition, or you have you're missing a primary care, or there's specific scenarios in the healthcare space that are super important. So we can recommend things and say, hey, did you know we have a partner that can do this? Or don't forget it's flu shot season. Or don't forget that, we can quickly help you find a primary care because it's the end of the season. So going through those and having this type of messaging engagement for people that are already engaged in the messaging, I think is a big trend. And then, specific use cases with machine learning are also interesting. You start to get a really rich corpus of messaging data with this very large engagement. And you can start to do some kind of machine learning intent classification or early identification of issues and trends that are happening. And you can start to segment and categorize your populations based on the type of integrations I've had. So we're seeing some early wins, and we're also seeing in the marketplace where there is an easier way to say, we think this person's talking about this. So can we just offer up some self-services while they're also talking and engaging with this human? You could offer some things on the side. And from an operations point of view, when you learn of a trend that's coming up early, it quickly allows you to respond. Going back to the campaigns, what we often see is, let's say a campaign goes out, all of a sudden you get a flood of information coming back in and you're overwhelmed and you're like, what's going on? If you can quickly do an intent as, oh, it's due to this campaign, you can decide to take some action. So I think those kind of trends we're seeing a lot of wins for, and I think that's going to continue.
Thank you so much, Hiren and Christine out there for sharing all these valuable insights about Accolade and messaging and healthcare communication. Just switch back to Grace and perhaps we'll get some Q&A.
Yeah, so we are coming up on our last minute. This was perfectly timed. So now we have a couple of questions from the audience that we'd like to ask you. So let's just get right into it. So the first question that we have is, do you think about messaging in terms of one-time interactions like a live chat? Or does the message thread persist over a longer period of time to maintain context of the ongoing conversation, kind of like an iMessage?
Yeah, so I would say it's the latter. Like I said, the health assistants really do a good job of building a relationship with their members over time. And even if it's healthcare support channel where it might be multiple health assistants, there's still that record of the conversation. Our goal is to never have the member have to like repeat information. So the messaging thread is really nice because you can just, as a health assistant, quickly refresh yourself on like, oh yes, these are all the things we talked about. Mm-hmm. So I really see it as like more of an ongoing thing, not a transactional thing. People might use it in a transactional way of like, I just have a quick question and need an answer. But our health assistants, they kind of take that and then look for, okay, I know that you're just asking about your benefit. You need a new benefit ID card because you lost yours. But I can see that also you are taking 5 different medications, and one of which is a really expensive brand name. Like, if you want, I can help you find something that's generic that might save you money. So we really look at those transactional things as a way as like an entryway where we can dig deeper and find like, what else can we help you with? So I think that, you know, a longer string of messages helps us continue to do that.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you for that. Another question is, when implementing Sendbird, it looks like you're generally using one-to-one chat between the health assistant and the member, similar to how my company would use Sendbird. How do you find Sendbird's back-end support for managing these one-to-one conversations in group channels, for example, managing response times, service quality, etc.?
So I can speak to that. It does require you to design that into your operational processes. So their SDK allows you to build it into whatever your processes are. We do have a one-to-one. We also have a one-to-multiple. So for example, if one of our members wants to talk to our health assistant and realizes that's a more complicated clinical case, we can bring in a nurse. Or we can bring a specialist in, like a pharmacist, or let's say a specialty nurse, behavioral health, for example. And so the SDK allows you to do all those things, but you do need to build a data model, and you need to build a reporting mechanism, and you need to be able to build a UI that will make sure that you can see all these stats. So for example, designing something that says, what's the beginning and an end of a session, especially with what Christine talked about. We want to keep that engagement, and we don't want to make it a one-to-one just transactional thing. So it's kind of hard to say, when did you end that session? There's theoretically not an end. This is an endless stream of information. So you have to decide what are your processes and policies on when you decide something ends. So we spent a lot of time saying, well, in our CRM system, we're going to do something equivalent to a close, to do, say, what happened in this case, write down a summary, and then the health assistant or nurse can close that case. And that's a signal for us to say, we spent this much time on this session. This was the beginning of the session. This was the end of the session. So you get that operational information. And then as far as service levels, you also need to think about what is the expectation that you're setting with your members or the customers that you're engaging. This isn't chat. So that means that operationally, unless you have a staffing model that supports it, they're not going to respond within 5 seconds. There may be some lag, and then you have to decide how you want to handle that lag. So again, what we did is we instrumented all this information to tell us, when does the member reach out to us? Is this the beginning of a session or a continuation of a session? And then we also instrument when the health assistant or the nurse engages in that session, so we know what that lag time is. And then we use that to our workforce management system to decide, well, what are the SLAs that we feel comfortable with and that our customers expect? And it's not always easy. I mean, you get the spikes in demand when you're not expecting it. And so you start to see that, oh, it's taking us a lot longer to respond, but at least if we give that information out to our operations folks, they can decide what to do. They can decide either to change the messaging up front to say, hey, it's pretty busy right now, so just know that it's going to take a little bit, but you can try us on the phone channel, or leave us a message here and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. But you do need to go in and decide how you're going to use the data that's going to be plumbing out to you with those click streams and how it fits into your operational processes.
Great. So the next question is, can health assistants initiate an outgoing message to a member, or perhaps start a group chat with a doctor and a patient?
I know that they can respond to if they've already started an engagement. Let's say the member has already engaged with a nurse or a health assistant. Yes, they can engage outbound. They can also pull in an internal specialist, like our doctors that are on in-house. We can definitely pull them in, and we can pull in the special nurses. I don't know if we could pull in third parties. Okay, I don't think we can pull in third parties.
Next question. Do you see any patterns in usage around age range, gender, sex ranges?
Maybe with respect to like adoption of messaging.
Yeah.
I mean, not as much as you would think. That was our assumption going into it, that especially with age, you would think, oh, it's going to be like younger, more tech savvy people. I mean, you do see that, but not as much as you would think. I think, again, it's really just people are starting to I think just with technology in general, people are starting to get used to getting things answered immediately, and whatever channel is faster, that's the one they're going to use. So no, I don't see a huge split between who uses messaging and who uses phone.
Cool.
I mean, I think the biggest split happens at a more economic level. If we definitely have members where they might not have a personal computer at home, they might not have a smartphone, or if they do have a smartphone, they don't have room to download a lot of apps. It's usually like the free phone that they get with their plan. So that's where I see the biggest split between those who use phone and those who use messaging, is those who can afford to have the technology.
Yeah, that's really great insights. So I'm going to wrap this up, but actually the last kind of 3 questions are in the similar vein. So you mentioned that Accolade's implementation is not chat, and there's not an expectation of immediate response from an agent. Does Sendbird support chat-like real-time messaging in addition to more asynchronous messaging? In other words, could an agent hold a real-time conversation with a member if the agent were available to do so?
Yeah. Yes, they can.
Yeah.
I can do that too.
Yeah, so Sarah can answer that too.
We do support real-time messaging. I mean, Sendbird at its core is a real-time messaging platform which can be used for both real-time as well as asynchronous messaging.
And then just kind of on your end, what is the typical turnaround time for messages? I guess, I mean, it's kind of answered implicitly that you don't set the expectation that's going to be in real time. It's based off of agent availability. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we're pretty fast for the most part, but it just depends on the peak season. Like right now, it's open enrollment. You have flu shot going on. We have a lot of campaigns going on, so it's pretty busy right now. So it can vary. Like we call them arrival patterns. In the morning, it's typically pretty fast, and then when you hit the lunch crowd time and everyone's jumping on during their lunch break or trying to contact us, your wait times can get up to about 30 minutes. And then again, the tail ends of the day tends to lighten up again. During non-peak season, it just depends on our staffing. And so what we try to do is we try to balance the staffing between handling phone time and handling message time. We've made the decision at our company that most of our staff will support both channels. I think some organizations decide to break them out and say you're only dedicated to messaging or you're only dedicated to phone. We found since the members decide to use both channels, we want our staff to also support both channels. So they do have to kind of make that trade-off in their head to say, we're staffed for this much open time to support members. If you start to see a flood of phone calls, your messaging is going to delay a little bit. But we've made the UI a little bit easier for them to see, like, oh, okay, a lot of my clients are starting to message me now. I need to carve out some time to make sure I'm responding. So it is a little bit of an operational, art to figure out how you're going to do that and try to get the speed as fast as answer. But I'd say you set the expectations very clearly with your members and users, right? That this isn't chat. We're there for you at any time you need us, and you can park and decide to have an engagement. But that also means that there's some latency in this conversation. And you're not going to be able to get a 10-second response, but we're going to make every effort to reach out to you. And because if it's a continuous thread, it doesn't mean you're starting over. You've got that richer engagement and discussion. So even if they get a little frustrated with the wait time, typically what we see is that satisfaction and NPS after the conversation is over, the resolution rates are pretty good and the satisfaction is pretty good. So it's not, I wouldn't say we're always perfect in saying, okay, why should someone have to wait 30 minutes? It's not ideal and we don't really want them to do that. But when they do reach us, they are wowed by saying, okay, wow, you guys know all your stuff, you know my information, you're really getting me to help get answered. We don't have to do as much transfers to people by saying, go send it to this person or send it to that person. Typically, the first person you get is able to handle the majority of the issues we have. So we feel like it's a pretty fair trade-off.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
To your point, the improvement of the tools to monitor like when are things busier and when they're not are helping us even tweak that and make it better. I think also from the user standpoint, we've done a lot of research of like what are some of the most popular things that people ask their health assistants that we feel like are pretty simple things that the member could do on their own. So we use some of the information about the topics of the messaging to look for what are the tools that we can create for self-service that allow people to maybe help themselves when instead of waiting. And then again, like when they get stuck, they can easily reach out to a health assistant via messaging or phone to answer the questions that they're stuck on.
Just one last question. How do you handle emergencies? Oh my gosh, there's getting a flood of questions again. So I'm going to officially declare this as the last question. We'll make sure that if we can, we'll pass on questions to you guys so they can be followed up with. But just in terms of time, I know we're a little bit over. The last question is officially, how do you handle emergencies?
What kind of emergencies? Like 911 type emergencies for the member?
It's not clear in the question, but I'm going to assume it's going to be like 911 emergencies.
Okay, I think we have very strong policies that we are not 911, so we quickly make sure that they can get back to 911. On our phone recordings, we always say that if this is an emergency, you need to dial 911. If we realize it's an emergency situation, we have policies and procedures that quickly guide them to a 911 or an emergency situation. So we have training and we have policies that manage for those emergency situations.
Awesome. Again, thank you both so much for joining us for this webinar. This was a super engaging one. We had a lot of members who joined. We had a lot of people who were asking a lot of questions. I mean, so much so they're like, hey, we got to put a pause on it now. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of you guys who attended and joined, to Hiren and Christine for sharing their wealth of information to all of us. And we hope you leave today with walking away with a lot of actionable insights that you can walk away with. And if you have any questions, feel free to kind of reach out to any of us. I'm just Grace at Senbird.com. So yeah, thank you so much, and hope you guys are able to join us for our next webinar. Thank you again, Christine.